Welcome everyone to the 2021 Charleston Forum. We are starting this year, beginning with our education series, because really everything begins with education. And here we have a fantastic panel to discuss the survey results and to discuss their plans as public officials leading the districts in the Tri-County area. I want to thank each of the leaders here for joining us. Thank Dr. Peterson for leading this discussion, and thank John Reed and his education committee of the forum for putting together this fantastic series. We're starting this morning, and we'll have a follow-up panel Friday at 11:30, and hopefully you can tune in then as well. I hope you've been able to follow the results of our forum surveys. Beginning last year in 2020, we put together a survey where the takeaways were the Tri-County area shares the same goals for a lot of things. The forum focuses on education, economics, criminal justice, and policing, and the future of the past. And for education, it was clear that everyone believed that all children deserved an opportunity to get an equal education. And if some people need more support to get that, then we should provide it. And that is an area where the forum survey found we weren't really meeting the goals that we all share. So this year in the 2021 survey, we gathered proposals that people in the area have been working on for years, and we put those forward to the community to find out, what do we support? What are the proposals we think will help us close that gap and be able to achieve the goals that we all share? So we have those results. They're posted on our website. They'll be up for discussion here today and Friday, and I look forward to hearing what our leaders have to say about their constituents' reactions supporting those proposals, which really, as if you saw in the Post and Courier and the city paper reporting, really was overwhelming at how strongly people favor making some of these changes. We have a great time to do it with federal money coming in. And again, I look forward to hearing what those plans are. If I can offer some other thanks before we begin, the only way we can make this happen is through our sponsorships. We have really had a record year for foundation support. And I'd like to thank the Yashik Foundation, the El-Hapa Foundation, the Dominion Energy Charitable Foundation, the Steinberg Law Firm Employee Fund. Other sponsors who have really been there for us all along include the Citadel School of Humanities and Social Sciences, the Charleston County Bar Association, Duffy and Young Law Firm, Motley Rice Law Firm, Gallivan White and Boyd Law Firm, and Samsung. Also want to thank some of our individual donors. We appreciate them supporting us, of course, as well. Ed Westbrook, Judge Stephanie McDonald, Dr. Catherine Duffy, Judge Michael Duffy, Robert Barber, Catherine Grant, Carter Worrell, Corman Legerton. We welcome donations from anyone, of course. It really helps us put things together and keep the conversation going, bringing all perspectives together. I'd also encourage you, even if you don't donate, make sure you follow us on social media and get 10 other people in your network to do it. The more eyes we have focused on these panel discussions and getting the discussion going, the more we can insist on having these policy proposals addressed and closing the gaps that we've identified. So once again, thank you all for joining us. John, please take it away.
Ryan, thank you. On this rainy Tuesday morning, what better way to honor the remembrance of the tragedy at Mother Emanuel AME Church than to discuss this region's most important institution. As Brian said, this is a two-part series. The second segment takes place on Friday, and it will be in part a response to this discussion today, provided by nonprofit and community leaders. And it's at the same time register at thecharlestonforum.com. My job this morning is to summarize a little more in a little more detail the results of the 2020 and 2021 surveys, because they form the basis for this discussion. And as a reminder, these surveys were conducted scientifically and to assure that the results are fully representative of the demographics of our region, all three counties, so that they can be considered statistically relevant and meaningful. As Brian said, that the 2020 survey really established three important education principles which were the basis for the survey in 2021. First, our community wants a public education system that assures equal opportunity for all students to be successful, and that it at present is not working well. Second, our community believes that school resources, that is, people and supports, should go disproportionately to where the need is greatest. In other words, that these resources should be distributed equitably. Now, a lot of people have their own definition of what equity means, but in this context and for this discussion, equity means the disproportionate sharing of resources with those who have the greatest need. Third, interestingly, our community is willing to pay for achieving these results through higher taxes, even though and even while there is considerable confusion about how much and how well resources are being distributed in schools today. So the 2021 survey was designed to build on those conclusions, but is much more directed, as Brian said, towards potential solutions, to things that appear to work that would help make the education system better. Overwhelming majorities in the 2021 survey across all demographic groups support the following solutions. Increased pay for teachers, including merit consideration. Hire and fire authority for experienced principals who demonstrate results. Assigning only experienced teachers to our most challenged schools, which is essentially the reverse of what is the case today. More innovation in high poverty neighborhood schools. Preschool, that is 3K and 4K, made available to all children in our region. Parental supports, such as parent advocates, where needed to strengthen school-family relationships and engagement. This solution received the highest level of support from the community across all of the potentials. And finally, 2 teachers in every early grades classroom where needed, and more partnerships between individual schools and community organizations, such as nonprofits and businesses. This is a remarkable degree of consensus in a community that has been otherwise divided on how best to go about improving our schools. Paying for these improvements has been the issue, due only in part to confusion about how and how well funds are being spent today. The 2021 survey proposes independent commissions to clear up that confusion, but even so, 3 of every 5 white respondents and 3 of every 4 Black respondents would accept higher taxes now to see these changes accomplished. As it happens, higher taxes are not the issue, at least not yet. The federal and state governments have delivered more than $400 million in COVID relief funds, which are one-time dollars, but highly flexible, to the 3 largest districts in our regions. And those dollars and these potential solutions are what this series is all about. The panelists have had the results of these surveys for more than a week and, of course, months of planning time to engage the community in order to prepare. To assist them today in informing the community of plans for these funds, we're fortunate to have Dr. Terry Peterson to moderate this discussion and the next one scheduled for Friday. While he will be facilitating the give and take amongst those on the panel, I will be receiving your questions in the chat box and will be monitoring and trying to compile those questions so that they might be posed at the end of the discussion. Dr. Terry K. Peterson is a Tri-County resident and well known to many of us. He has served 8 years as the Chief Education Deputy for Governor Richard Riley, who is generally thought to be the education governor, and also 8 years as Chief Counselor for the United States Secretary of Education. He has held many education positions in South Carolina, ranging from a classroom teacher to a parent involvement specialist to an advisor to college leaders and the director of a statewide business education accountability commission. Terry holds a doctorate with emphasis in research designs and statistics in education. He's been certified by several state Supreme Courts as a closing expert witness on a comprehensive education reform and financing, and is a national expert on after-school and summer programming. He is currently the education consultant to the C.S. Mott Foundation, senior fellow for the Riley Institute at Furman University, and chairs the National After School Alliance. Terry.
Thank you, John, for that overly generous introduction. First, let me thank all the district leaders and everyone participating in this forum. It's very difficult to get people together. One thing I've learned, and you can tell I've been in education a long time with my gray hair, and that is, it's very important to have consensus as well as good ideas. Sometimes good ideas are very exciting to a few people, but very disorienting to others, let's put it nicely. So if you can find a consensus on some interesting and important strategies, that can really move education forward. And before we move into the question and answer period with our school district leaders, let me give you some more background about the significant additional education funding. The most recent and the largest is called ESSER 3, a nice federal name, in the American Rescue Plan, and there are also earlier education stimulus funding available. These fundings, particularly the large, significant recent fundings, are over 3 years. So they present new opportunities for schools and districts in the Tri-County area to better engage and inspire students who need them the most to catch up, keep up, and get ahead after all the disruptions of the pandemic. I realize very clearly, having worked in school financing for many years over many places and districts and states, that there are far more needs likely in our districts than these ESSER 3 and other stimulus funds. However, these new funds are very significant and are unique in how flexible they are in two big buckets, and it's worth thinking about them that way. One bucket, at least 20% of the funds, is for starting up, expanding, and improving summer enrichment opportunities and comprehensive after-school or similar initiatives. These summer and after-school opportunities are intended to go way beyond the typical narrow summer and after-school programs. They should be engaging, emphasize broad learning through enrichment, academics, social emotional development, and involve community organizations and families. The second bucket, the bulk of the funds can be used for improving and transforming the school day, as well as provide wraparound services and additional learning supports. They basically can be invested in any strategy or set of strategies that are provided for in any federal program. That's the flexibility John was talking about. It's important to note that these types of expanded teaching and learning supports in and out of school really call for, in the law and guidance, greater community and family engagement. While using different words, many provisions of these funds are similar to many of the strategies in the survey that John just covered. And they also match another recent statewide survey from parents about what they see is needed in after-school and summer programs. So when there's so much happening at once and we've had such a rough year or year and a half, to simplify it in my own mind when I'm talking about this, I kind of think of these funds as like a large school-wide or district-wide 3-year innovation fund. Think about that. A large school-wide, district-wide innovation fund. So in addition to greatly expanding summer enrichment and comprehensive after school, these funds could be used to make 2 or 3 positive, real changes or additions or transformations, especially in high need elementary, middle, and high schools. Also, such needed innovations and transformation should be supported with the engagement and coaching of teachers, principals, families, neighborhoods involved, employers, and so on. Now, I've said enough. Let's move on to our leaders from the 3 districts. We have a lot to cover, a lot of folks, and they know a lot. So this is going to be a real challenge for us, all of us, to get through this in some organized fashion, but I'm sure we can do it. I will ask a district leader and board member from each district, initially individually and then together, to address several questions. If people tuning in have a question, please enter it in the chat. And at the end, we'll try to consolidate them into a couple of questions for our leaders. So now let me introduce and thank our district leaders in advance for participating. I'll do this in order of the alphabetic configuration of our districts. From Berkeley County, we have Deon Jackson, who's superintendent for the district. Prior, he served as chief administrative officer. David Barrow currently represents District 5 and is the board chair. From Charleston County Schools, we have Jeff Borowy. He's the chief operating officer for the district and is very familiar with the strategies and requirements associated with the ESSER funds. Reverend Eric Mack is the chair of the board and has served on the board since 2014. From Dorchester County, too, Mr. Joe Pye is superintendent. You have seen Joe around if you've been in education for at least, well, I know he's been superintendent for 20 years. Ms. Gail Hughes is board chair, and she served on the school board for 15 years. So, as I mentioned, we have a lot of ground to cover, and what we're trying to do is we're trying to give I can't get my own rules right. 3 minutes for each district to answer a question. And I'll go in alphabetical order initially, and then I'll alternate districts. I really apologize. I hate interrupting anyone. So I might, when you kind of get near 3 minutes, I might have to say, it's time for the next district. I don't know how nicely to say that. Anyhow, please accept my apologies for trying to keep us on time. So my first question, and we'll, just so you know the order so you can be thinking about this, I'll go to you, Mr. Jackson, first at Berkeley, and then to next to Charleston, and then to Superintendent Pye. This question, maybe the superintendent's or chief operating officer may want to just answer, and the board member can chime in if there's time. So first question, the forum survey that John just covered identifies specific solution areas for reforming underperforming schools. What is your reaction to these solutions and their application in your district? And how might these recovery and other funds be used to address some of these issues to improve and reform schools in your district, especially where they are most needed and where the disparities are most prevalent? Mr. Jackson.
Yes, sir. And so in reviewing the survey data, and I'm not sure about the other panelists, but I'm not sure that I saw any surprises there with respect to the results and some of the recommendations. And so those are, those results are some of the recommendations that have been discussed for a while now. And so particularly in those schools, in those areas of highest need. And so how can they be implemented, I guess is the answer, the question with the ESSER funds. And so the good news is for us, and I'll answer for Berkeley, the good news is for us, some of these strategies are already in place. And so what that means with the additional ESSER funds is we now have the ability to expand or improve upon those more effective strategies that have already been implemented. And so, for example, we talk about wraparound services and additional support for families, for students, for parents, and to that fact, in some areas, the community. There was a recommendation there for additional services such as parent advocates. Well, in Berkeley County, we don't have parent advocates, but we do have social workers. Our social workers are LMSWs, and so they're licensed social workers. If they're out in a private practice, they could actually bill for the services that they provide. And so our folks are able to not only provide social services, SEL services for our students, they're also able to assist our parents They're also able to make connections into the community and find available resources that students, families, parents may need in order to make those connections as well. And so while it's not the same as the parent advocate, it's pretty similar. And so what we've done and have the plans to do is improve or increase the number of social workers that we have. And I know we'll talk about this a little bit later on, but you mentioned the amount of funding that we have, but the limited time in which we have to spend those funds. And so what we're cautious about is implementing strategies that may have a short-term impact for us, but being able to, we're concerned about the ability to be able to sustain those initiatives after the 23-24 fiscal year. And so going into 24-25 and beyond, how can we maintain those effective strategies? And so I know I said a lot there. We have about 3 minutes, and so I know some of what I said I'll be able to elaborate a little bit more later in the conversation.
Thank you, Superintendent. Mr. Borowy.
Thanks, Dr. Peterson. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. I have the dubious task of filling in for our superintendent, Dr. Postlewaite. The one time and date she couldn't be here, and rightfully so. She's got very important issues she's taking care of, but sends her regrets and is extremely supportive of this effort and wants to make sure that it is a mirror image of what we're doing here at Charleston County. Like Superintendent Jackson said, we won't have time to cover everything, but I do want to cover a couple of the key points here in Charleston. The support areas that were identified in the Charleston Forum survey reflect very favorably with what we have found here in the district so far. We received 4,000 responses on the ESSER funds, and there are a lot of the same exact topics, and I just want to cover a couple of those. One is the umbrella of parental support, and Deon did mention that. That's extremely critical. We've heard that from all different sides, connecting the parents with caregivers so that they are able to have their children come into the school successfully is extremely important. And I think the COVID pandemic has made that gap worse. We obviously have had parents that are bashful or a little reluctant to come back towards school. And in some cases, we might not have served them well enough to make them confident in how we do things. That really needs to be one of the key focus areas for us. And we'll do that through the Parent Advocate Program, which is in place, but that's something that needs to be strengthened. The area partnerships, I know that all 3 school districts have those. Nonprofit charities, the educational nonprofit volunteer groups, we don't have the bandwidth to cover everything ourselves, and we're really going to rely heavily on their support across the board. One of the administrative proposals that John mentioned at the beginning was pay for teachers and principals. And it looks like my connection is saying it's unstable. If somebody sees me fading, let me know and I'll take the video off. I know I'm responsible for IT. I got to get that fixed around here. The issue with pay, we've made strides with that. Our Board of Trustees has been extremely supportive with pay for teachers, and we're trying to stay at the top of the game for the state of South Carolina, and I expect that to continue in the future, paying teachers what they need to be here. I'll tell you, even looking at what we have for summer school coming up, teachers are exhausted. They've given it their all, doing both in person and online at the same time in many cases, keeping them interested. They obviously have the desire to support kids. They know how important education is, or they wouldn't be here. But paying them for their services is extremely important. And I look forward to our Board of Trustees continuing to support teacher pay. Related to the allocation of resources through ESSER funding, that was an important issue. We've got to make sure that we've got community engagement. We've begun that already. But the big thing is you can't make everybody happy, but being transparent in what we're doing and how we got the input to do what we're doing is extremely important. The last thing I'll leave you with is I don't want to say it's reassuring, but to know there isn't a silver bullet that solves everything. It's going to take multiple approaches, whether it's, again, stepping up the 3 and 4K programs, 2 teachers in a classroom if possible, the parental support, all of that has to be part of that. Connecting with schools that have had disparate conditions, inequity conditions. That's the real focus of the parental support and shoring up the school staff with those public or with those private partnerships. Anything you'd like to add, Reverend Mack?
No, you're covered there. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Superintendent Pye.
Yes, sir. I found the report not alarming either. It was things I've known about from my long 51-year career that we've dealt with. It's just more prominent now because we're such a mobile society, also mobile with our teachers and staff. It's not the small town of Somerville anymore that people live here all their lives. It's constantly changing, bringing forth new ideas and also new challenges. We draw a lot of students, especially for special needs, as we've been known of a super special needs program in our district, and we've been like a magnet for that. We take great pride here in trying not to have any have-not schools. We do not have high priority schools and those types of things. Every now and then a school will slip on a list that the State Department has said that they look at this, that there might be disparity between certain groups of students that maybe that school needs to address, and we're all over it with our data, and our staff dedicates a lot of time for that. I personally do the attendance area changes in the school district, and I work hard to try to, when there's that opportunity, not to ever bust neighborhoods or children around. We don't do that. However, we do try to look for ways to join the neighborhoods that will enhance that school without hurting the other school they're leaving, to keep a more of a balanced approach so that we don't have pockets. But occasionally a school falls in an area that we can't really move, do much there. It's what it is. They're in an isolated type area. We are really putting, our district is strapped with budget problems, all the things that's being recommended, certainly to go there. My concern is it's all about teachers and staff, which is teacher pay, teacher incentive, high quality teachers. All that comes with recruitment. And it's hard to recruit when you don't pay the money that we're the lowest teacher pay in the Tri-County area by far. And we read about the $1,000 bonuses and the raises. These are things we wish for here. Thank goodness our teachers do not choose to leave. And we're blessed that we've done a great job of maintaining the teachers of high quality in our district. But this year, we're going to use a lot of the estimate we're hoping to use if the community's in agreement to lower our class sizes, which have been extremely high for years. We've used that opportunity. We've already looked at, we're hiring math coaches, math teachers throughout the district, extra ones in the schools to do extra math instruction. As we know, that's a national, state, and local issue. Preschool classes, we realize it all begins there. We've never been able to do anything but what what the state provides us money for, and that's basically like one class per, and 20 half a day class where we can serve up to 40 children per school site. Some schools need a lot more than that, and certainly with all day, because of after school care, these parents want all day model, and that's something we're working on this year too. We're also doing hoping to add, which we have not been doing. We start with first grade age children go to our after school program. That's going to change this year. We're going to drop it down to a lower number, lower ages, so those parents will be more apt to send their children to school if they know they're providing some type of care. Quality teachers is really the name of the game, no matter what you look at, and quality principals. I do feel we have solid base there, but there's a teacher shortage, and we're right now over 40 teachers short. But that's adding to lower class size. We probably would be about breaking even if we had not added all those teachers to try to help us. And we'll use attrition to funnel them out in the coming years to get us to the 3-year mark, hoping that the state of South Carolina will finally correct a long overdue funding system that is equitable to all districts, no matter what their size or their location. zip code the children come from. And we've been a real loser. We've been in the bottom 5 of the 70 school districts, 80 school districts for my whole 51 years. We've been at the very bottom. Yet again, our test scores, I can say, is in the top 10. So what something's happening there, and that's people. But that's changing with all that's going on in our community and social things. We have mental health counselors in all schools, but we need social workers. We need to really do much more on the social end, especially after this pandemic. There's a lot of efforts there, and I think a total imbalance of equity among the various groups of students. And so trying to work on that. We've got to beef up our entire core for all students. We've got to put the rigor in for the advanced kids. We have got to continue differentiating the instruction with quality instructors, not tutorial programs. We're talking about teaching where they missed it, wherever they were at, whether it be in our district or another district. We will pull those kids into those arenas, and those teachers are working with the classroom teacher to have an academic plan for those students to progress. So that's a quick.
Thank you. We'll get back to you.
Terry, forgive me for interrupting, but I understand that some people are having difficulty accessing the chat box. So feel free to put your questions in the Q&A box, which is just right next door to the chat box on the lower end of your screen.
Going on, the next question we're going to throw to the school board members in each district. Let me set that up first, and that is, it's rare to have, as we talked about, such a large amount of flexible funding for innovative use, although it is for 3 years. It's a short time to deliver these new and better opportunities, but it is 3 years, by the way. And it can set in motion, if we think about it cleverly, some principles, some strategies, some new partnerships with community groups and families that can continue once some of the funding either disappears or gets more limited. So what, as school board members, what kind of principles or strategies might you want to hear about, to get feedback about for the deployment of these funds from teachers, principals, parents, students, employers, and community members, especially as it relates to more and better opportunities in schools and neighborhoods, both during the school day and after school and summers? Reverend Mack, can we start with you, please?
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Peterson. So there's no doubt that we do want to hear feedback from every aspect of the ESSER funded programs and initiative. So you will know that CCSD, and you have stated earlier, and as John has stated earlier, will receive about $163 million in the ESSER funds to spend in 15 allowable areas. And we will ensure that stakeholders have a chance to have input into these decisions. So far, we've held initial meetings on 2 days with around 60 stakeholders involved in those roundtable discussions. We have surveyed parents and staff, and currently have nearly received over 4,000 responses for funding priorities in those areas. So we will take our engagement definitely to the next level with more detailed conversations about programs and funding in the coming weeks, hopefully by this midsummer. So we know that this is, the largest infusion of new funding ever available to school districts. And we definitely realize that we must make sure that over the next 3 years of this funding, that we are being good stewards, and that we are monitoring how these funds are spent. And without a doubt, as in with the survey result, equity is and will be a built-in component into this discussion. And by the ESSER funding program design, we must spend these funds to assist students who are most impacted, with special, I would say, emphasis to the minority group students who were behind their peers prior to the COVID pandemic, and are now even further behind. We realize that the gap was wider prior to COVID, and it has even gotten wider after the COVID situation. And we understand and realize that, and we're definitely going to be engaging intensely with community, with the stakeholders and everyone at the table to see how best to utilize these fundings over the course of this next spending. And we understand that Charleston County will be receiving $249 million over the period of this time. And we are definitely going to utilize this opportunity to make sure that we reach into the areas that we know where the greater impact is, to close the gap and making sure that our students are brought back up to where they need to be due to the cause of this COVID situation.
Thank you, Reverend. I really appreciate that. Chair Hughes from Dorchester too. What are your thoughts?
Hi, thank you very much for having us and allowing us to speak. Basically, we're doing a lot of the same things. We have reached out to our community, and we actually have an ongoing survey at this point that we've reached out with, and we're getting numerous responses on, that basically ask questions such as, what kind of things are you looking for? Are you looking for more mental health supports? Are you looking for education technology, more safety type concerns, facilities, learning loss? What areas are you feeling the needs are in our community? You know, we depend so much on our community, our parents, and that to get back with us, tell us these things. And so this is a great opportunity for us to do that. And as I said, we're getting lots of responses on it. And we've had lots of people come up with ideas on our indoor air quality and things that we need to do that, on different ways that we can address the learning loss with summer school programs. We're looking for ideas of things that maybe we don't already have in place, some ideas of things that maybe they can suggest to us of ways that we can address some of these learning losses and some of these issues that we're able to reach some of the needs of our schools. As Mr. Mack said earlier, we're making sure that we're looking at all of our areas, and we want to make sure equality in every one of our schools, and that we have, you know, we're spreading the wealth per se, and everybody is getting the money that they're needing to address the areas of their needs. So it's a great idea I'm kind of glad that our ESSER 3 funds came out and said that this was something that needed to happen, because it has really caused lots more interest from the community and from the parents to give us their input and to get involved. So this has helped us on a twofold situation. So with that being said, I think this is going to be a great opportunity for us to bridge that gap, not only with our students, but with our parents and with our community. So I think it's a win-win for everyone.
Thank you so much. Going to Berkeley County. I don't know if Chairman Borowy has joined. If not, Mr. Jackson, you want to weigh in? Oops, I think you're on mute, Mr. Jackson.
There we go. So I'll weigh in for a second. Mr. Borowy was not able to join us this morning, but just like Charleston and Dorchester, we've also administered a survey for our initial round of community engagement, and proud to report that we have just under 5,000 respondents, which is pretty respectable for a district our size. And many of the areas that were of concern are also reflected on the survey results that we received, and very similar to Charleston and Dorchester as well. And in addition, as far as ongoing community involvement, we plan to establish forums for targeted specifically for community involvement, community input prior to finalizing the plan for August. But one of the things that Mr. Pod touched on, I think should be reiterated is, this was a worldwide pandemic. And as far as we're talking about education nationwide, superintendents and school districts from all over the nation, we've experienced, or we're seeing the same things. And so, locally in the Tri-County area, the Low Country area, we have our Low Country Education Consortium. And so we have these discussions, and we're all experiencing, the same similar issues. But on a broader spectrum, we have affiliations nationwide. And I think that's one of the things that the pandemic did. It brought educators from all over the nation, brought us a little bit closer together through the use of technology as we attempted to brainstorm and problem solve our way through this pandemic. And so we're experiencing the same things. And I bring that up to say, while we talk about the disparity in educational services, I like not to focus so much regionally, because some those disparities exist in many locations. Mr. Pye mentioned, as far as priority schools or schools of need, there aren't any or many in Dorchester County. However, there are students that need additional assistance in many of the schools, and we have the same thing here in Berkeley County. And so one of the discussions that we've had in Berkeley is, this may be an opportunity for an academic reset and an opportunity to truly address the core instructional program, to truly determine where we stand, where we are as a school district with our instructional program. Because, while we do have the funding for, after school programs or a summer program, if the issue is a core instructional issue, like, this is the prime opportunity to address those matters. And then through our enhanced MTSS program, then we're able to, in effect, provide a student with an individualized instruction, if you will, individualized instruction plan or individualized learning plan for that student. And so the students that need to be caught up to speed or need a little bit more remediation, we're able to identify those students and identify specifically what they need, so we can take a targeted approach and address the needs of those students, as well as on the opposite spectrum, the students that need a little bit more either enrichment or acceleration. So some of the students were able to be successful throughout the course of this pandemic. And so we have to address all students. And so I think addressing the core instructional program, as well as enhancing our MTSS initiative, will allow us to address the needs of students, all of our students, more strategically.
Thank you so much. Going on to the third question, let me kind of digest some of the things you have said. You've all analyzed and with a lot of input, and I think that's terrific and needs to continue, because one of the challenges I've seen with education improvements is that sometimes we ask people on the front end what they want, and they don't always agree with everything, but in order to keep, it's critical they keep engaged somehow, even if they don't agree with all your strategies. And that is one way to help with the funding as it runs out, through school community partnerships in the day after school summers. We got one question, I read it really quickly, I might have read it wrong. One thing that often principals and teachers have really not had much chance to learn, how do you build partnerships with families? How do you build collaboration with community groups? And so investing in that. And on the other hand, I was on a call the other day with someone from another state of school administrators, interesting. And he said, a lot of the community groups who want to get involved sometimes are a little too critical of the school district. You want critical partners, but at some point, it gets under people's skin, so they don't want to play with you. So it might be worth sitting down with some of the big community youth groups in this area, arts groups, health groups, and maybe talk together about how maybe they could change a little bit what they're doing to fit more what your goals are both in the school day and after school and summers. And on that last point for my next question, a good friend of mine, he's a big education advisor, Chester Finn, he's written a lot about education. He reminds us that children are only in school 20% of the time. They're out of school, but yet awake 80% of the time. So that whole, another thinker, Milton Chin, calls the space after school and summers where educators work with community and youth groups, both in the schools and in the community, a third space for learning. And I would think right now that is a really critical. So strengthening the school day, new transformations there, early childhood. And I think the other breakthrough areas, finding new ways to offer after school and summer programs, sort of the way you described it. So they include targeted help where needed, but also enrichment and excitement and enhancement. And sometimes they actually need to be together because a lot of young people might not come to an after school or summer program if they think it's just remediation. It might include all of that, but it has to be exciting. And so the next question is, so one of the big buckets in the ESSER 3 funding is that at least 20% of the money needs to be spent for summer enrichment and after school opportunities. What might be some areas there that you might be interested in exploring, as well as some of the activities and strategies you're talking about in the school day? So I think there we're going to start with you, Mr. Pai, and you can chime in, Ms. Hughes, too, if you want, or I'm not sure how you're going to handle that. You can handle it any way you think best for Dorchester, too.
We've got quite a comprehensive, first of all, our first opportunity to get rolling with this is with our summer programs. And so we have quite a comprehensive summer setup throughout the district. We're serving nearly 6,000 students, which is, we've never been, lucky we've ever done 1,000. So we're way up there big time. Quality, we're not talking about tutorial. We're not talking about busy work. We're not talking about own learning. We've had enough of that this year. There might be some support of that, but the bottom line is good intensive teaching, small classes. Of course, there was a problem finding enough teachers, but we raised the teacher pay per hour to make it very enticing for them to come. As tired as I know they are, please help us to try to start filling in that gap. And so, and we're using all the data from our end of the year testing assessment programs that we have to be able to determine where we can target ways to catch the students up. And some of them were way behind before the pandemic came about, and they're further behind. So we're putting those types of things in. There will be high interest, but heavy intensity, that we will not be wasting time. We have a morning session of 3 hours and an evening session of 3 hours. To move on from that, after school is being expanded. We have it during the summer for after school program from after these, make sure the kids get there. Of course, we're providing free transportation, food's free, everything's free, there's no cost. And we're doing some enrichment too. From that end, we want all children to have opportunities where they all suffer in some way. And so therefore we are we are planning to expand this fall. Our after school program would take younger children, as I mentioned, making it much more instructional rather than so much after school care, making it really there. We're working through our adult ed program, our ESOL programs, to target families that they're not coming to us, we got to go to them. I'm proud to say this past year, we put in during this pandemic, parent coordinator, and we have 5 parent centers now in our district spread out, and great quality people running those. We're now planning an all-out effort to move in mobily into communities that may have transportation issues to get to our sites. We're taking the site to them. We're already contracted or working with 3 or 4 big churches in the area where we have programs set up there. You know, all kind of technology that we're trying to infuse in that. So, of course, class sizes, really working heavy on lowering those and making sure that areas of weakness, we double our strength. We can't afford 2 teachers per room, but I can afford maybe an extra teacher in the grade level that can really pinpoint the problem. So we're making every effort we can.
Hughes, you want to add anything or?
But I don't know if I heard Mr. Pye say something about the Mack 180 interventions that we're also adding into that as well. That's another enhancement that we're doing, and the math coaches, that kind of thing. So yeah, we're trying to look at all options of all ways that we can add in those extras or add back in those extras that maybe we've had to reduce in the past. So.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I want to compliment you on the math part. We hear a lot about reading, and reading is important, but actually in the new economy, math may be just as important or more important, but there's some evidence that the slippage was actually more in math during the pandemic. So, and other subjects too. STEM and STEAM are really important, I think, in the new economy. So going on, Superintendent Jackson, I think you're up next to talk a little bit about the whole after-school summer wraparound services.
Yes, sir. As I mentioned before, we have an emphasis on our core, and so we also are implementing a summer program in which, full disclosure, we've had a summer program previously, so before the pandemic and obviously before the ESSER funds came into play. And so we do see an opportunity to expand and also provide more enrichment for our summer programs with a more targeted approach. Again, one of the things I think we also have to consider, as we mentioned, the two buckets. We talk about the full educational experience for the students. And so that also includes the environment. I'd be remiss if, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't discuss that just a tad bit more. This is also an opportunity to use the funding for, highly impactful, long-term sustainable improvements as well. And so where there may be, indoor air quality issues, or there may be some environmental concerns, this funding does also provide the opportunity for school districts to address those needs and concerns, as well as we, this theme of equity in education, continues to come up. Well, the environment is also a part of that, that equitable experience as well. And so, but with respect to the summer programs and after school programs, coincidentally, we had a conversation with me and my staff, had a conversation this week and earlier this morning with an organization that would like to partner with Berkeley County School District to offer an after school program. This program would be at no cost to our students and minimal cost to the district as well, in our most needy areas, if you want to call them that, an area with the most need. And so seeking out opportunities such as those, and so I mentioned, during the first question, and you said it, a few times as well, Dr. Peterson, this funding is available to all school districts for basically 3 years. And so how do you make the most impact, and how do you create the most, establish the most sustainability with your initiatives, with the funding that we have, but the limited scope in which we have to spend it? And partnerships are definitely one of those ways you can fully leverage the funds that you have available, but also you're peeking into the future. And so when it's, you have to assess your programs and have to determine which programs or which initiatives are proven to be effective, and you have the data to support it, and you have to make that decision to include it into your operating budget. How are we able to do that, provide the services for our students, having the most impact for our student body, but not as severe an impact on our fiscal budget? And so we see the partnerships with community organizations as a way definitely a main strategy of getting that accomplished.
Great, thank you so much. Jeff, how about you? What from a Charleston perspective?
Sir, I guess going third, I can easily say ditto. I can't disagree with comments from these esteemed two superintendents. Those two buckets that you've identified are clearly the top among areas that need to be addressed. From a summer learning perspective, I've done reading tutorship since I've been here in the district, and the most disheartening thing for me was seeing that student come back in the fall and be behind from where I left them. And it's even worse because of COVID. Obviously, we've got to do a lot more catching up than just the typical summer loss. Like Superintendent Pye, this is our school district's largest summer program. We've met the challenge of attracting teachers to help support us after the toughest year they've had. And one of the things we really worked hard on in Charleston County was to assign or have priority seating for those that truly needed it. So schools reached out to those students that were behind and talked with families and expressed to them the importance of coming back for this rigorous program this summer to even more than, again, avoid the learning loss in the summer, but to catch up from what we've lost. When school opens, we're obviously going to need to focus on tutoring and individual programs to make sure that we're meeting every kid at their need to bring them up and running. And we've talked a lot about the wraparound services. That survey that we've had, the top thing was to provide the social and emotional supports for our children and their families. And our Board of Trustees has now for 2 years voted for increases in mental health and other counseling service, and that'll really jumpstart and help us continue to propel that program. We're going to obviously have to take advantage of technologies that exist. You can't be in every place at every time. So telehealth, telemental health, using technologies to get to people along those lines wherever possible is important, that we don't just leave that out of the mix. And taking advantage of our current partnerships. Charleston Promise Neighborhood, community, and schools, be a mentor. We're all going to be looking for them to help us with ways to help us to improve those wraparound services for our students and families.
Reverend Mack, anything you'd like to add on that point?
I would say ditto, but I also would like to add, just like Dorchester and Berkeley, we have established a very robust summer program engagement for our students, not just, as you said earlier, Dr. Peterson, just busy work, but definitely a program that will help move our kids. And we've identified well over 5,500 students that have also engaged and will be a part of this robust program. And I'm excited the fact that our teachers are excited to be a part of this learning curve that we need, or the gap that we need to close. And so we're looking forward to this piece, and also to include, as Jeff talked about, the mental health services. We see how important that is in this pandemic situation, and making sure that our kids are well prepared, not only just on the learning curve with the math and the reading and so forth, but also the emotional and social concerns that are there as well. So we have fully engaged in that component, and we are working toward making sure that we try to maximize as much as we can during this lost time that was garnered, but also to catch it up during the summer program.
Thank you so much. Really, I think we're lucky in the Tri-County area. There are a lot of community youth groups. Arts integration is a very effective way for instruction during the school day, after school, and summers. STEAM is a great way to really engage students. And for middle and high school students, having Tri-County Tech here and as a partner, both for youth apprenticeships, dual enrollment. I don't know if anyone's doing this, but I was talking with someone yesterday in another state, really looking at how after school and summers for older youth, late middle school, high school, maybe we should be doing more like pre-youth apprenticeships or dual enrollment and early college where you could get credit after school and summers as well as in the school day. A lot of students who are just struggling can't ever get to those courses, and we maybe really need to look at that space after school and summers as a kind of a clever way to try out something. I think several of you mentioned it's like you could use some of these funds as almost a little trial and see if they work. And then if they do, you can continue them. So I'm going to go on to one more question and kind of combine it with the last two we had. We sent you so that we can have a little bit of time for question and answers. I've been so pleased to hear about the outreach that you've done so far and the responses you've gotten. I know sometimes you ask for input, but people they don't know if you're really listening or you're sincere or they're so busy. So I'm really impressed with that. So how do you see going forward what you might do in your districts to keep this higher level of family engagement, both in what they do or community groups and youth groups and what they do to support young people, but also helping as advisors and colleagues with you as you implement these programs in some ways, which might help, as some of you mentioned, sustain the programs if the funding dries up. Any thoughts you have about that? I think we'll start with you, Jeffrey, if you don't mind. We left on you and Dr. Mack, Reverend Mack, and we'll come back to you right away.
You want to start, Reverend Mack? Or you want me to take it?
I'll follow up.
What? All right, we could do that. We could go ahead.
Yeah, well, as we said earlier, we will exhaust every idea on how we can gather input from various publics, entities, and groups. And I can say that we have the online survey and the 2 conversation groups to date too. And one of the questions that we've asked of those groups was how do we get to the underrepresented parents and those who don't come to meetings but have great ideas about what needs to be done. And so we are discussing setting up telephone calls with several hundreds of parents selected from our most needed schools to basically call and ask them 2 questions. What does your child need in order to have a greater chance of being successful in school? And then the other question is what do you as a parent or even a caregiver need that will assist you in supporting your child's education? We felt that those are 2 great important questions to help us engage into this conversation and discussion. But we will put all of our plans out for review once we have gathered it, and we will be transparent and with the way the funds are spent and as to how we're making sure that we're maximizing on the input that we're getting back from parents and communities and stakeholders, because it is important that as we reach out to them and as we gather this information that we are saying, okay, you've given us answers to questions that we've asked. Now here we're going to try to use these funding to maximize, to put resources to those areas so that we have buy-in. We have buy-in from the district level, we have buy-in from the community, and we make this work so that we can reach every child, every student. And we'll also be flexible, as if something isn't working, then we have to make changes, or we have to even abandon the program. So we won't. In other words, we won't take the funding. We will continue to say, well, we'll use this idea, and if it's not working, then we will divert to something else, or to attach onto those things that are working, so that we can maximize the funding that in the plan that we have in place. So we're looking forward to trying to engage as much as we possibly can with the community, with the parents, in making sure that this works.
Hey, Dr. Peterson, if I could just tag onto that related to sustainability, because it's so important. We see this pot of money out there, and the question is, how do we sustain? I think even before that is to identify the measures of success. That's one of the things we lose a lot in federal grants. You get money. If it's successful, you want to fund it. You want to find the funding to continue it. But short of having a measure to know it's successful, how do you consciously decide to do that? And so that's going to be a challenge, especially with overlapping programs. But we want to have those measures of success so that when we get to the end of this funding, we can make those hard decisions that say, this has been successful, here's why. We have to find the money to continue this successful program and or possibly expand it to other schools, because there are very few things we're going to expand across an entire district right at once. We're going to run some of these smaller programs. If they're successful, we want to fund it to a greater extent. And we need to, tighten up the straps here at the district and be able to make sure we're spending our money wisely in the most important place, and that's in the schools. And that's something I think we can do here at our district.
Thank you, Superintendent Jackson.
There we go. As far as ensuring that we engage, everyone into this process, we mentioned the survey that we administered with the, just under 5,000 respondents, and we're definitely proud about that. But we also have our teacher forum group, which is an extremely organized and highly functioning group of classroom teachers, classroom teacher leaders, for that matter, that they're the practitioners. They are with the students on a day-to-day basis and have a firm understanding of what's needed, what they need to best help the students that are in the classroom. And so we also have our administrator groups as well, our administrator PLCs. And so we get our administrators involved in that process as well. The last piece to that, as far as the engagement component and the input component, is to go out into the community and establish opportunities for those forums or for the community input sessions. But I think what's very critical is to ensure that it's a two-way communication and not just a one-way form of communication. One of the most frustrating things about being on the other end and being a survey respondent is to be asked for my participation or be asked for my input and have no idea what the results are or what the decisions that were made based on the results. And so we solicit that feedback, or we solicit that input as a district, as an organization. We certainly need to inform the public, one, of the survey results, and then two, the district's actions based on the results that we've received. And so as far as moving forward, and not just forward in light of the ESSER funds and with the 2024 sunset, but moving forward, period. That's one of the things that we are cognizant of, and we have to establish. We have to build a system. We have to build a system of two-way communication and ensure it's sustainable. Again, not just in regards to responding to the pandemic, not just in regards to the ESSER funding, but as we continue to move forward on this path of education.
Thank you so much, Superintendent Pye and Chair Hughes. What are your thoughts of how you're going to keep the family engagement and input and community and youth group engagement and input as you go forward?
First of all, you got to have that involvement, and we've always had it here, but the way this extra money is being done with the input is mandatory, and people all across the country have heard it. They're expecting to see it in all kinds of forms. Even the parents who've never been involved before now are questioning, for transparency, why am I not being contacted? So we have to make sure we're reaching all of our community, and communication is going to be key to that. How do we communicate what's happening, what still needs to happen, and be honest and truthful about what's not working based on our assessments and things, and maybe new innovative ideas, and getting input before we put them in to say, you are the stakeholders, how do you feel about that? We have teacher liaison plus teacher forum. We have parent liaisons, student liaisons. I meet with them personally every month. And so we've been doing that ever since I've been superintendent. But we also do occasionally task force to handle a particular event, such as the implementing our health protocols for the pandemic. That was done by over 150 parents, community members, students that were all served on that as a community task force on that one topic, broken down in a lot of subgroups. So, but there's still a real need for equity for teacher pay, and also being able to have good teachers, quality teachers, enough of them to disperse throughout South Carolina. So I think the pressure needs to be picked up with the community's help, knowing the needs we have and what progress we're making with the monies we receive, that we can maybe continue it after 3 years if we really work on the equity through funding that we need to have in South Carolina that's fair for all parties involved, so all children have the same equal opportunity. And then I would say we can't stop. We have to more than ever promote innovation among our own staff and folks. Let's come on, not just the problem. Let's think of solutions. Let's PLC it to death and see what we can possibly do, and make sure that we have the data, the research to back up the quality programs, especially once we implement it. We have to be able to report out what's working, what's not, and be very flexible, as Deon said, and move in whatever direction we think the winds are blowing that need to be moved in that direction with solid information on where we're going. So that's what I would say.
Thank you. So, Chair, I'm going to come back to you, Chair. He was just, I gotta get my own house in order. 1 second. John, can you be ready with a few questions from, I know we got a lot of them in the question chat box, but Chair Hughes, what are your thoughts before I go to John to get some questions from the participants?
Well, I think that Mr. Pye kind of touched base on everything that we, as between the board and the district, have discussed. But I think one of the main things that we've got to remember is that not only do we have to communicate this to find out how they want everything done, but we also have to make sure that we are able to communicate after the fact what the results are, simply because we've got to have that buy-in from the community so that we can continue this, because this is not something, even though we're getting this one-time fund, it's not something that we want to see drop off at the end of this funding. We want to see about continuing this throughout. So we've got to make sure that we've done our homework here as a district and as a board, that we're able to sell this to the community, that this is what needs to happen and this is how we need to make sure that it continues.
Thank you. It's a good summary. I mean, it's really is it's a bigger opportunity now, but also you can, as all of you have said, you can try out some things and fine tune them and keep people engaged, and then you can pick and choose what might be working for the future. What an unusual chance we have. It doesn't happen very often. John, do you have some questions you've been consolidating?
I do, and I will apologize if I don't get all of the nuances of the several questions that have come in on different topics correct, but let me do my best. First, though, I'd like to say that there are a number of comments and questions about the summer programming that each of the districts have now in place for this summer and intend for the future. Rather than get into the specifics of how long are they, how many of them, where are they, I think it would be helpful if each district could provide us, maybe into the Q&A box so everybody can see it, a representative that could provide more information about the summer programming that you have in mind. That would be very helpful. Let me ask this first question of Mr. Jackson. It wasn't specifically directed at him, but I think his responses sort of point the way. Interesting to see an increase in the number of social workers, and there's an interest in knowing just how many might be brought in thanks to the ESSER funds. But there's also a difference between additional social workers and the kind of individual needed to help parents who are maybe less trusting of the school system or more disengaged from their child's learning, to help them reconnect or connect with the schools. So I wonder, Deon, if you could comment on things like parent advocates or the parent university that used to be in place in many places, that is an opportunity for parents to be better educated about how the schools work and what their child needs.
Okay, so you gave me a couple of things there. And so I will start with the social workers. And so as far as one, I'll start here. one thing I think we have to remember as well is our plan, even though once submitted, if we have substantial data that shows that there's a more effective practice than another, we have the ability to make an adjustment to our plan. And that's, to me, that's a good plan. Any plan that you create that can't be adjusted, it may not have been such a great plan to start with. And so we do have that ability. And I say that to preface the question of how many additional social workers are we requesting. I believe that number is 4 additional social workers. Now, it doesn't seem like a lot, but at this point in time in Berkeley County, we have a grand total of 10 social workers. And so we've in effect increased the number of social workers by 40%. And so they are not assigned to each individual school. They have an area, if you will, or in some cases a feeder pattern based on the amount of need in the location. What was the second part of that question, John?
The question was how many, you answered that, and whether that's the same thing as advocacy for parents and parent universities and the like.
All right, so I'll go parent university. Parent university is typically, that function is typically handled by a different, handled by Office of Federal Programs, is the office that typically does our parent universities. Now, that's something I've taken a look at prior to me becoming superintendent, and I do believe that there may be some need for an adjustment there or a breakdown of silos, and so that we can have a more cross-functional team that's working on that effort of parent university. Back to the title of social worker, and that may not be the most appropriate term for what our folks do in Berkeley County. You know, they are called social workers because they are licensed social workers, but their function is more of a parent advocate type of functioning. And so they make the connection between the students, the teachers, the school, and also the parents in order to ensure that the parents understand and the students understand the needs, but also the resources that are available you know, to them. They make those connections from home to school, but also from home into community resources as well. And so while the term, you know, social worker is different from a parent advocate, in many cases, they have a similar function. I'm a little familiar with the parent advocates that the positions that they have in Charleston County, as my wife was a parent advocate for many years in Charleston County. And so, Jeff, you'll like this. Some of the ideas that, some of the initiatives that we've implemented in Berkeley County actually got some of those from Charleston County, as we tend to do. But just going back to your question, John, the social workers and the parent advocates, you know, although it's a different title, they have a similar function.
Okay. Jeff, I won't call on you for a response, but I think the question was really directed to all the districts, and you might ponder the value of more parent advocates and parent university for the district going forward. Let me pose the second question though, Jeff, to you, and I think it requires my sifting through some editorial comments on the history of, in the past, a district or CCSD in particular, providing feedback and follow-up and follow-through and fidelity of implementation on the ideas that come in through such things as surveys. I'll leave all that for you to think about. To say rather, since your chairman has endorsed the idea that there should be an ongoing connection with the community, and both in the implementation of new plans and in, as you said, measurement of results and what happens next. Do you have any initial thoughts on how exactly that might be done different in CCSD than, say, might have been done on Mission Critical or other earlier initiatives?
So, John, we don't have anything. We don't have anything in writing. We just know that there's a need for that. I've been in the district 7 years. Prior coming to that, I served in the military, and one of the most common questions I got as a commander in front of the troops was lack of communication, lack of transparency. And so that problem has continued for years and years and years. And with the changing technology, we obviously have different ways to do that. They're not all as successful or positive for a lot of people. So I think that the answer to that is it's going to be multiple means of communication. Reverend Mack mentioned either one-on-one meetings with parents or phone calls, small group meetings to target those with the greatest need. That's where we get the least amount of feedback because when you send out a survey, you send out a robocall, there are parents likely to be working 2 or 3 jobs and they don't ever get that message. They don't ever see that email till well after. So that is going to be one of the target focus areas, is that that highest need group, to get the input from them on what they need. And then publicizing everything that we've done, making it very convenient. We've tried to do that in COVID. And over the course of that last year, we've gotten feedback from parents on how to improve that. And we've adjusted it. We don't have all the answers on communications. If they have better ways that we can communicate with them, we'll take advantage of it. One of the comments I saw in the chat was, hey, the robocall came out, you requested input by some Sunday, who did you contact? We need to show who we've reached out to and then publicize who's been part of the teams. I can just say in the time that I've been here with Dr. Postaway, she has added different forums for communication. And I fully expect that as we leave COVID, those means of communication are going to continue to be used. Those are superintendent coffees throughout the district on a regular basis. Those are principal teacher cabinets on a regular basis, as we've done by Zoom so far, and reaching out to different schools to receive input from parents and teachers at that venue. So the bottom line is we don't have the written plan. We just know that we need to continue to expand the communication. We can't expect everybody's going to like the decisions that are made, but the last thing we need is for them to say, I didn't have a chance to have input, or, I didn't see the answer, one or both of those.
Thank you, Jeff. This last question is a combination of 2 different topics, and it probably isn't a short answer, but we're short on time, so do the best you can. And I'll address it to each of the superintendents, beginning, Mr. Pye, with you. First, there's been considerable discussion about disciplinary procedures in schools. Does your district have any plans to implement restorative practices in your schools? And the second question is that there is a new law called the Schools of Innovation Law, which allows a district with its board to release essentially a school from many requirements if it gets approval from the board and the Board of Education to be innovative, whatever that means to you as a superintendent. Do you have plans to either implement restorative practices or to make use of the new innovation law?
Both of those are under discussion. We've done everything we could to close out this year. And of course, we're trying to advance forward the summer programs and the fall. So we're quite involved in that. And that's starting it with my cabinet. I have a 25-member cabinet. And so it's a large group. It's starting there. And we will then take it to our principals, assistant principals who really are involved. And then we'll try to get down to the teacher level over the summer. So whatever we do has to be in place for the beginning of the school year in August. As far as the innovative schools law, again, I told you at the beginning of the last program, we pride ourselves in not having a have-not school. There's not a school that people can call me up and say, my child cannot attend that school. It's poor teachers, poor leadership, or whatever. That's not to say you don't get a comment every now and then. We also have a couple of very high-flying schools. All of them fly pretty high, but every now and then one or two go really high, and they've got maybe an experienced principal. I would consider that for them, but I don't have the risk school that I think it was intended for, to give them a chance to step out of the district limelight and structure mandates and try to try to solve their problems, say like maybe a charter school would do, and a Meeting Street School, and schools like that have had the ability to be innovative and creative, and sometimes we've been accused, and I think rightfully so, of stifling that. This pandemic has caused us to rethink everything. So we're not rethinking discipline, we're thinking everything, how we do the strategies for teaching, how we know which students to target and work with. And when I say target, I don't mean in a negative way. I mean, how do we provide the services not only to that child through social workers, mental health counselors, and financial aid if they need it. What do we need to do as a public school system to be able to get into these homes and really, really help people in a genuine way, and not because it's being told to do it. We're doing the best we can to make our programs equal access and opportunity for every child.
Thank you, Joe. Deon and then Jeff, as briefly as you can, same two-part question. And Terry, it's back to you after that.
All right, I'll go brief. So the schools of innovation law, I think that's something that it's still in the exploration phase. There have been no decisions or determinations made clearly and obviously with an exiting superintendent and coming into a new administration. We've not had an opportunity to have those concrete discussions, and so it's still in the exploration phase. With respect to restorative practices, fortunately, this is an initiative, and as far as in Berkeley County, we've started implementing restorative practices about 3 years ago. We've taken the measures to have additional trainers within Berkeley County as well, and so we have trainers within Berkeley County to work with our schools, administration, and teachers, really full staffs on restorative practices. And so the goal there, we're also in the process of revamping our disciplinary code to be less punitive. And honestly, this was an initiative by our administrators. They wanted more options, if you will. They wanted to truly address the issues that were ailing students. And so we know that a lot of times when students are experiencing difficulties, it manifests themselves in behavior. And so not just address the behavior, how do we actually truly address the issues that our students are dealing with? In addition to that, I'd like to add that we are also utilizing or implementing the Leader in Me program in many of our schools as a resource for our schools that feel they need a little bit more of a structured program to help students as far as their decision making and being good students, being good citizens, and respecting themselves and others. And so, just really succinctly, that is Berkeley County with respect to restorative practices and Leader in Me in a nutshell.
Jeff?
Yeah, John. So the common thread between both of those restorative schools and innovation schools is buy-in from the school. So, we've allowed both to be brought forward to the board for approval. If a school has the teachers and the principal that want to implement either restorative practices and or want to become an innovation school, it starts with them. If they're not bought into it, we're not going to be able to force it upon them. And that's where we've had success in the past, is that ground swell of support from the school with both of those programs. One of the things I'll just mention with innovation schools is the fact that unfortunately some think automatically that means you're giving the school away. The innovation schools, as we see it, is not giving a school away. We've recently got a board approval for one of our high schools to move down that track, and that's to receive variances from the things that it believes it needs to succeed, to the point right from the beginning, giving schools some autonomy to make decisions and to be measured on their success or failure. That's exactly the way we see innovation schools, as an opportunity for the right principal and the right teachers to put that forward with a chance to make some changes that we can't give them without being an innovation school.
Terry?
Let me thank the school leaders for for your time today and very thoughtful ideas and comments, and for everyone else who tuned in today and offered their questions. I think we learned a lot. It's hard to imagine when you think of this Tri-County area that together you have almost 120,000 pre-K to 12 students. And that is a huge responsibility, but also a huge opportunity for everyone in the community to make them successful. We didn't have time to get into it today, but there's massive job shifts taking place after the pandemic. And we have a lot of very important employers in the area: Volvo, Mercedes, Boeing, Bosch, going on. And they need a new set of skills for the future for them to be successful, so that our community has employment and an economic base. And I think what you're discussing is so important. And then the one area that was in the question that I think you might want to think about, all of you, and that is the huge importance, as I mentioned earlier, of STEM and STEAM. And not only in the school day, but that is a great opportunity, a great strategy to organize your summer and after school programs with these employers and others. STEM and STEAM, it really will prepare our young people for the future. So you may want to think about that and all the other things you're thinking about. So as you talked about, this really is a way to make a down payment on some new strategies, innovations, additional opportunities that can be tested out. And hopefully, if those that succeed, you can continue. I would hope, as all of you have commented, that this dialogue among the school folks and teachers, school leaders and teachers and principals and community folks and families will continue right on as you implement these strategies, and then in reporting back and making future decisions. And I would think, as some of you have said, maybe in areas that are and communities that are really in need of additional support and resources, maybe even additional new kinds of outreach needs to be taken there. I heard some of that today. So toward that end of keeping the dialogue going, discussion going, thinking going, I want to remind everyone there'll be another webinar. This one with community leaders on Friday. Is it Friday or Thursday? I've got, apologize. I think I have a
Friday, same time, 11:30, and you can register on the charlestonforum.com website.